Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one.
The introduction. The night hung heavy over Millbrook, Pennsylvania, as a thin veil of fog wrapped itself around the quiet streets. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, characterized by its tree-lined roads and quaint suburban houses, each with their stories cradled behind closed doors. Residents tended to their gardens, walked their dogs, and exchanged pleasantries as they passed one another. Community, woven tightly by familiarity. Yet, beneath this serene facade lay a darkness that would soon shatter the peace. On a chilling autumn evening in October 2015, the tranquility of Millbrook was disrupted by a chilling 911 call. The local dispatcher received an urgent report of a body found in the woods behind Wilshire Park, a popular spot for families and joggers alike. The voice on the other end of the line trembled, panic bleeding through the words. "There's a woman. She's not breathing. We need help." In that moment, the town shifted from a quiet hum to an anxious buzz. Officers responded quickly, lights flashing against the night sky, illuminating the narrow path that twisted through the trees. As the first responder stepped into the clearing, the sight that awaited was a haunting one. A lifeless body lay nestled among the underbrush, half hidden by fallen leaves. The unthinkable had occurred. Detective Sarah Connors was dispatched to oversee the case, her instincts sharpening as she arrived on the scene. The air was thick with tension, and the unease felt palpable. Camillys went to bed unaware, but for Sarah, this was the spark that would ignite a months-long investigation into the life and tragic death of a young woman named Emily Hartley, a crime that would unravel secrets and test the bonds of this close-knit community. The victim. Emily Hartley was not a name that echoed loudly through the halls of Millbrook, but those who knew her loved her for the vibrant spirit she exuded. 50-year-old elementary school teacher, Emily was often referred to as a guiding light in the lives of her students. Her passion for education was infectious, with children eager to learn and soak up the kindness she offered. With a warm smile that could brighten even the gloomiest of days, she had a way of making every child feel special. Seen. Emily lived in a modest, sunlit cottage on the edge of town, where her garden blossomed with colorful flowers, a reflection of her vivacity. To her neighbors, she was the girl who frequently offered baked goods during holidays, a caring friend who would check in with a wave and a cheerful hello. Yet, behind that bright exterior was a complexity that only her closest friends understood. Her companion, Sophie, often sensed the shadows that sometimes crept into Emily's life. "You're too hard on yourself," Sophie would often remind her over coffee. As they discussed the pressures of teaching, Emily would laugh it off, brushing away the concern. But deep down, she grappled with self-doubt about her chosen path and her aspirations for a family that seemed so distant. As the investigation unfolded, Detective Connors delved into Emily's life, speaking with colleagues, friends, and those who had crossed her path. Each conversation revealed layers of her existence. Not just the light she shared with the world, but also the turmoil she faced alone. The deeper Sarah dug, the more apparent it became that Emily was a young woman with dreams yet to be realized, and now, tragically, those dreams would be stilled forever. The crime scene. The atmosphere at the crime scene was tense, shrouded in the cold chill of the autumn night, a fitting backdrop for the gravity of what Detective Connors faced. As she stepped deeper into the clearing behind Wilshire Park, The soft crunch of twigs underfoot punctuated the eerie silence. The beam of her flashlight danced over the area, illuminating a lifeless figure that lay sprawled on the ground, partially draped in the dark fabric of the forest floor beneath a canopy of decaying leaves. Emily Hartley's body was discovered in a position that spoke volumes. Her limbs disarranged, the stark contrast to the chaos surrounding her. Detective Connors noted the signs immediately. There were no visible marks of struggle, no sign of robbery. This predicament was as unsettling as it was perplexing. She crouched down, careful to avoid disturbing any potential evidence, and examined the intricate details. A close inspection revealed trace evidence: a cluster of broken branches, a footprint deeper than the others in the mud, and strands of hair caught in the rough bark of a nearby tree. Meanwhile, the air was thick with a metallic scent of blood, mingled with the earthy aroma of fallen leaves, planting the feeling of urgency deep within Sarah's gut. It told her this was no random act of violence. There was a sinister intent behind it. As the coroner arrived to collect the body, Detective Connors initiated her duties, securing the perimeter and ensuring that the scene remained undisturbed. She orchestrated the gathering of forensic specialists who would meticulously comb the area for clues that might hint at the identity of Emily's killer. There was something deeply personal about this crime. Its location, the chosen method of everything, pointed toward a motive, tangled in the threads of Emily's life. A puzzle she now felt determined to unwrap. Time was not on her side, and as dawn threatened to break, so too would the shroud of secrecy that surrounded this tragic murder. The early investigation. The days following Emily Hartley's murder unfolded like fog rolling over the hills, thick and heavy, shrouding the community in sorrow and uncertainty. Detective Connors, driven by instinct and a growing sense of urgency, plunged into the early stages of her investigation. Each lead felt like a dropped thread, but Sarah was resolute in piecing together this fragmented tapestry of Emily's life. Initial inquiries began at the elementary school where Emily had taught for nearly a decade. The faculty room buzzed with the mournful echoes of their students' laughter. Now silent. Teachers shared stories about Emily's dedication, recalling how she often stayed late to help struggling kids. However, as Sarah probed deeper, she discovered whispers of jealousy among staff and murmurs of a recent conflict with a fellow teacher, Vanessa Markham Dodd. The two women had been at odds over a school project, and rumblings of tension reverberated through the faculty. Sifting through a stack of interviews, Sarah felt an unsettling chill. Vanessa's name was repeated with a mixture of resentment and fear, hinting that perhaps the bitterness had escalated beyond mere rivalry. Yet that alone wasn't enough to cast suspicion. Sarah needed more. With Emily's friends now heavy with grief, the detective scheduled a meeting with Sophie, her closest confidant. The muffled sobs accompanied Sarah's questions, revealing Emily had felt overwhelmed in recent months, but hadn't disclosed the full extent of her concerns. Yet there was something more: a strained relationship with an ex-boyfriend, Danny Collins, who had become increasingly possessive after their break. As Sarah pieced together these fragments, a picture began to emerge, not of a singular antagonist, but of a complicated web of relationships that hinted at underlying rage, jealousy, and desperation. With every interview, with every fragment gathered from the past, Sarah could feel the walls closing in around Emily's heart. whispering the secrets that might ultimately lead her to the truth. The investigation promised to twist and turn beyond the idyllic small-town charm, and Sarah braced herself for the darkness that lay ahead. The dead ends. As the investigation progressed, Detective Connors encountered the chilling reality of the Case series of dead ends that seemed to mock her relentless pursuit of justice. The initial excitement of potential leads began to wear thin, replaced by a pervasive sense of frustration. With each passing day, the investigation grew colder, much like the autumn air that swept through Millbrook. The first setback came from Vanessa Markham, who, under vigorous questioning, maintained her innocence with a facade of calm demeanor. Her alibi was airtight. She had been working late at the school during the time of Emily's murder, yet the defensive edges of her story ignited further doubts in Sarah's mind. Was it too good to be true? Or was Vanessa hiding deeper shades of resentment? Then there was Danny Collins, Emily's ex-boyfriend, who presented himself as the penitent lover, devastated by the loss. His grief, however, did not absolve him of suspicion. While he claimed to be out of town at the time of the murder, a quick cross-check revealed inconsistencies. When confronted with his timeline, he faltered, his glossed-over wounds flaring suddenly, anger piercing through his otherwise collected facade. Yet again, lack of solid evidence prevented Sarah from making any arrest. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of unfulfilled questions pressed heavily on Sarah's shoulders. The town of Millbrook grew restless, fear rippling through the community like an unseen predator lurking in the shadow. Local gossip swirled, painting familiar faces as potential villains, and a suffocating sense of dread hung in the air. The detective seemed unable to unearth anything substantial, leading to a creeping suspicion that time was working against them. As the autumn leaves began to fall, littering the ground with silent reminders of life's transience, Sarah felt the urgency mounting. She knew someone held the key to unlock the darkness veiling Emily's murder, but the deeper she dug, the more elusive that truth became. The burden of these dead ends weighed heavy, but with a stubborn resolve, Sarah refused to yield. She would unearth the truth. Somewhere in the labyrinth of lies, she would find the answer. A break in the case. Just when the shadows threatened to engulf the investigation, an unexpected call arrived in Detective Connor's office, an awakening in the otherwise stagnant rhythm of the case. It was a tip from an anonymous informant who claimed to know something about the night Emily was murdered. The heart raced as Sarah listened, her pen poised over the notepad, ready to jot down every detail. The informant divulged that they had witnessed a heated argument near Wilshire Park the night Emily was last seen. They described two figures, one of whom matched Danny Collins' description, and another who was cloaked in anonymity. The details were vague but specific enough to send a pulse of adrenaline coursing through Sarah's veins. This was the break she desperately needed. That evening, she regrouped with her team, mobilizing a fresh effort to track down witnesses from that night. The park, often a popular spot for night runners and stargazers, had seen a lull in activity due to the local chill. However, Detective Connors focused her attention on nearby businesses that were still open. A 24-hour diner and a gas station just off the main road. Anyone could be a key witness. The next day, Sarah arrived at the diner, its fluorescent lights casting a harsh glare on the faces of patrons who huddled over steaming cups of coffee. She approached the waitress, who seemed to recognize the urgency behind the detective's piercing gaze. After a few probing questions, the waitress nodded, Recalling customers who had mentioned a loud argument outside the diner shortly before close, she pointed her to a table of college students who had witnessed much more. After an hour of back and forth, one young man recalled seeing two figures arguing, with the heavy-set one seeming increasingly agitated. When he shared that the angry figure had stormed off toward Wilshire Park, Sarah's heart raced as she pressed for more details. The pieces fell into place, signs of a confrontation that might not only involve Danny, but suggest a third party. Perhaps someone Emily had grown increasingly concerned about in the weeks leading up to her death. As she pieced together this fresh information, the sense that they might be approaching the solution filled the air like the first breath of spring after a hard winter. Detective Connors knew they had to tread carefully. This was a delicate moment in the investigation. With each revelation, she felt herself drawing closer to unlocking the truth. The whispers of who might be responsible growing louder as the final threads of Emily's story beckoned to be unraveled. The suspect, with the fresh lead from the diner igniting a new fervor in the investigation, Detective Connors found herself focused on a particular suspect. Danny Collins, the anonymous witness's description, agitated figure. The confrontation at the diner indicated a possible shift in the narrative. Danny, with his dark past and recent possessiveness, now appeared to be the linchpin in a troubling scenario. Sarah gathered her team to strategize the next steps. They meticulously examined Danny's alibi from the week of Emily's murder. Time was critical, and they needed to verify if he truly was away or if he had manipulated his whereabouts to avoid scrutiny. A few phone calls and a steady approach yielded results that would change their course. Local surveillance cameras were reviewed, revealing Danny's truck parked near Wilshire Park that very night. The footage showed him arriving shortly before the confrontation, a half hour leading up to the time frame of the murder. The shocking realization settled over Sarah like a storm cloud. A window of opportunity had opened, and she was prepared to walk through it. In the ensuing days, a sense of urgency pushed the team towards a confrontation with Danny. Detective Connors framed the questioning to keep him off balance, introducing the newfound evidence subtly, as if allowing him to feel the tightening noose without outright accusing him. Sitting across from him in the interrogation room, she sensed the shift in atmosphere the moment she placed the surveillance footage on the table. Danny's face morphed from confusion to a defense resting on the tip of a thin veneer, a bravado. He furrowed his brow, denying any wrongdoing, his attempts to divert attention raising alarm bells in Sarah's mind. "I loved Emily," he protested, struggling to maintain the facade. "I wouldn't hurt her," but the protective instincts creeping through Sarah's gut shouted otherwise. To add to the evidence chain, Sarah ordered a forensic search of Danny's vehicle and property, invoking a broader backdrop of suspicion that went beyond mere emotional turmoil. What they discovered next would send ripples through the investigation, marking a significant turn in the case. As Danny's story unraveled, the weight of guilt pressed closer around him, intertwining with a deep-seated rage that Emily had seemingly awakened, in Hema rage that may have fueled a final confrontation in the dark woods of Wilshire Park. The pieces fell into place, and Sarah was determined to ensure that justice would prevail for Emily Hartley, no matter where the search for truth led. The trial. The air inside the Millbrook courthouse was thick with tension as the trial of Danny Collins began. Remote whispers filled the gallery, where community members gathered out of a mix of curiosity, despair, and a thirst for closure. The town had been gripped by the tragedy of Emily Hartley's death, and now As the trial unfolded, the collective heartbeat of Millbrook felt fractured, waiting to see how it would resolve. Detective Sarah Connors took her place in the courtroom, an anchor of professionalism amidst the emotional turmoil swirling around her. She had led the case from the first chilling call to the gathered evidence that led to this momentary reckoning. The air was electric with apprehension as the door swung open, and Danny entered this expression, a mask of bravado. But the flicker of something deeper haunted his gaze. The prosecution laid out its case with meticulous care, revealing the timeline of events leading up to Emily's murder. The jury listened intently as witnesses testified, painting a portrait of a man whose external charm concealed an underlying fury. A fury ignited by heartbreak and jealousy. They recounted the argument at the diner, Danny's erratic behavior, and his presence at the park that night, each detail building a shadowy narrative around his character. There awash evidence unfold the forensic analysis, the echo of a broken relationship, each element landing like blows to the defense. Yet just as the case seemed solidified, the defense stepped forward, armed with a strategy of doubt. It introduced new theories suggesting other possible suspects, leveraging Emily's complex relationships, and questioning whether Danny's actions that night had strayed into the realm of defense, not premeditated murder. The atmosphere grew heavier with every twist and turn of the proceedings. Memories of Emily's vibrant life fluttered through the minds of those present. Her laughter, her passion for teaching, and her hope-filled dreams. Her absence echoed loudly, reminding everyone of the stakes that hung in balance. As the trial progressed toward its climax, Sarah felt a mix of determination and dread. The defense would likely lead the jury to a verdict of uncertainty, aiming to cloud their judgment. But she kept reminding herself family Hartley deserved justice, and the truth, however obscured, would seep through the cracks of deception. On the final day of jury deliberation, the courtroom atmosphere thickened. Sarah's heart raced as the judge returned. Murmurs skittered through the crowd like autumn leaves in the wind. The moment the foreperson announced the verdict, guilty vibe that had settled on Millbrook's shoulders began to lift. It was a solemn reminder to the community of how precious life is and how fragile trust can be. And as Danny Collins was led away in handcuffs, a lingering sentiment coursed through the room. This was just the beginning of healing for a town shattered by tragedy. A solemn vow to preserve Emily's memory, ensuring her story would never be forgotten. Detective Connors stepped back, knowing that the pursuit of justice, while painful, had brought closure to a fractured community, and in doing so, had honored the life of a young woman who had so much left to give. The aftermath. In the weeks following the trial, the town of Millbrook began to stitch itself back together, though the scars of Emily Hartley's murder remained raw and visible. The courthouse, once a symbol of tension, became a place for healing as the community navigated the complexities of grief and shock. Many came together in support of one another, embracing Emily's memory as a catalyst for change in a town that had been engulfed by sorrow. Detective Sarah Connors found herself reflecting on the case's challenges and revelations haunted her off-duty hours. Although justice had been served, the emotional toll on the community weighed heavily on her heart. She attended vigils honoring Emily, where candles flickered in the soft autumn breeze, illuminating the faces of mourners who clung to cherished memories and pangs of heartbreak. Each moment shared brought stories of Emily to life, reminding everyone of her laughter, compassion, and unwavering spirit. But as the community rallied together, layers of sadness unfolded, revealing different shades of trauma. The school where Emily had dedicated her heart and soul decided to create a scholarship in her name, aiming to support young teachers who shared her passion for education. The initiative found support in the community, becoming a powerful acknowledgement of Emily's legacy and the impact she had left behind. Sarah attended the first scholarship ceremony, where tears mingled with hopeful smiles that spoke to the promise of new beginnings. In quieter moments, Sarah struggled with her own lingering emotions. Memories of the investigation would play like a haunting film, spotlighting the fragility of life and the darkness that sometimes lay hidden beneath the surface. In even most ordinary of places, perhaps it was the need to confront this darkness, or the desire to encapsulate Emily's story, that drew her to write a cathartic release that transformed her grief into something tangible, something that could honor Emily's short life, something that could honor Emily's short life. As months turned into years, the community slowly turned the corner from mourning to remembrance. Still, it was clear the impact of Emily's murder would forever leave an imprint on Millbrook's psyche. Detective Connors continued her work sounding the alarm on domestic violence and advocating for mental health resources, fostering connections between law enforcement and community organization. She realized that though the justice system had served its purpose, the real healing involved dismantling the cycles of abuse and anger that had stifled too many lives. Through it all, Millbrook's identity changed a tale, no longer just defined by the smiles exchanged between neighbors, but now one bravely transformed by loss, awareness, and resolve. Emily's spirit loomed large, a reminder of the past and a beacon for a hopeful future. As the seasons shifted and life found its rhythm again, residents carried her memory, each step forward echoing a commitment to never forget the light that once shone so bright. Detective Connors took comfort in knowing that while justice had been served, its true meaning lay in the love and care they would continue to cultivate in Emily's honor. Reflection. As snow began to blanket Millbrook, wrapping the town in a serene cover of white, Detective Sarah Connors found solace in moments of reflection. With each flake, memories danced in her mind: Emily Hartley's laughter, the camaraderie shared among colleagues, and the lessons learned through the heart-wrenching journey of justice. Sarah had been the guardian of a narrative that showcased an unsettling truth beneath the surface, a truth rooted in resilience amidst despair. Despite the long hours and sleepless nights, her heart was full from observing the community evolve. The scholarship program dedicated to Emily became a beacon of hope, nurturing voices eager to teach, inspire, and spark change in young minds. Though they could never reverse the pain of loss, turning grief into purpose felt like a tribute to Emily's way of keeping her spirit alive. Knowing that the shadows of violence and heartbreak still loomed, Sarah continued to advocate for initiatives that addressed mental health and domestic violence awareness. She understood that the work to rebuild a community extended beyond singular events. It called for continued vigilance and support.